you're all keeping safe and positive and healthy in these uncertain times. Thank you for switching on for some good information this cloudy, windy and cloudy Saturday afternoon. The Thinkologist was launched exactly a month ago today, and in this time the channel totaled over 250 views, and the number of subscribers has been going up every week. Thank you dearly for the increased interest, and I'm happy that we are growing slowly but surely a community of Thinkologist right here. For those of you that watched my previous episode 4, you'll remember I've asked you to think of your opinion, your reasoned opinion, on the capital punishment. And the reason I asked you to do that is because today we will briefly discuss an autobiography of a very controversial personality named Albert Pierrepoint. He was most notoriously known and nicknamed the official executioner. I finished this book back in June this year, and I was impressed by Albert Pierrepoint, the man above all, before Albert Pierrepoint, the executioner. This is the perfect example of a book who cannot be judged by its cover. I expected to read about grim details, about accounts of the last words, about exciting and fascinating other details, but Albert Pierrepoint has a very dignified way in which he carried out his craftsmanship, and so he does not offer such interesting and grim details. Like myself, perhaps you didn't know that the capital punishment through hanging was the legal norm for some crimes in the UK just some 60 years ago. So that could be the age of your parents, the age of your grandparents, or maybe your age is just crazy. Albert Pierrepoint became executioner at the age of 27 when he followed his father's and uncle's footsteps. In succession, the Pierrepoints have been Henry Pierrepoint, which was Albert's father, Thomas Pierrepoint, which was Albert's uncle, and ultimately Albert Pierrepoint. Just like a side note, there was only one other family who undertook this position hereditarily, and their name was the Billingtons. Just like a side information if you're interested for future references. The book is very rich in descriptions, with the very first chapter immersing us into very specific details about Albert's childhood. He candidly recounts his first independent journey to his uncle Tom in Clayton, and the long summers spent sipping ginger beer, indulging himself into his auntie's spice cake, and just messing around the stables. He also recalls a covert craft of his uncle, one that kindled his curiosity but inhibited him from asking. It was only through the word of mouth in the village that he eventually found out that his uncle Tom was away sometimes and occasionally for a job. So he was away for a job. In the middle of this summer reverie, the Great War broke out, and Albert remembers that his father and uncle met more often, for reasons only known to them both. The very direct piece of information on his father's craftsmanship came from a poster outside a newspaper agent, and it read, "My 10 years as executioner by Henry Pierrepoint, retired executioner." Now just imagine being 11 and finding out that your father's side preoccupation is that of executioner. What would you be thinking? It's very, very crazy. The same newspaper continued to publish columns of Henry's reminiscences, which were read at large by the whole Clayton and covertly by the very, very young Albert. These reminiscences revealed that Henry's desire to pursue this ambition was very much anchored in his childhood. He nurtured this ambition since he was 12 and acted towards its fruition at just 20 years of age. In this sense, he wrote a letter of intent to the Home Secretary of the time, Mr. Ridley, who invited him for an interview the very next day. Very soon after the interview, Henry was set to start training, with the very first hurdle being to carry out a dummy execution. In very little time, Henry apparently mastered the craft of calculating the drop based on the prisoner's weight and height, and laudably managed to keep his nerves under control. The very first real execution carried out by Henry as an assistant to James Billington was that of Marcel Faugeron, a young Frenchman who killed a juror. Marcel did not speak a word of English, and in the night before his execution, he reportedly walked up and down his cell, so restlessly smoking cigarettes. The next morning, Henry and James met the prisoner with the judicial ending of life, namely through hanging. A rather peculiar episode happened immediately after this execution. The doctor witnessing it all rushed to Henry to record his pulse, and having recorded a normal speed, he hushed to Henry, "You'll do." It was only after this episode that Henry Pierrepoint received an official confirmation that he was added on the official list, the Home Office official list of executioner. It's paramount to mention that all three Pierrepoints, Henry, Thomas, and ultimately Albert, were not some sort of bloodthirsty villain who derived pleasure or satisfaction in the taking of life. Despite all rumors that surround this controversial topic, Henry always considered himself to be the arm of the law, and so did Thomas and Albert, acting on behalf of the state in what they were all convinced to be the most humane and dignified way to end someone's life. Some of others, Henry's reminiscences, included the time when James Billington had been engaged in the execution of his old friend Patrick McKenna, who in a state of mental confusion killed his lover and was shattered and penitent about his deed. Billington died soon after carrying out this last task, and it was rumored that this last thing he had to do, namely hanging his best friend, troubled him very much. The one striking similarity between Henry and Albert, his son, is that they have both nursed this ambition from a very young age and thought of it as a natural calling, a very funny and odd natural calling. But anyway, both father and son have also worked at a cotton spinning mill as they grew up, because back in 1900s it was illegal for a 12-and-a-half-year-old boy or girl to work part-time at a cotton spinning mill. At 13, Albert went full-time at the cotton spinning mill, and this sadly marked the end of his education. He very candidly admits throughout the book that he would have liked the completion of his studies, and that the education is the finest thing in the world. I really couldn't agree more. Outside his working hours at the mill, Albert enjoyed playing football as well, making great efforts into entering the local league and striving to buy his own boots. Unfortunately, as the Great War came to an end, the mill stopped production, In the summer of 1922, Henry's condition, Henry, which is Albert's father, was affected by an incurable disease. He decided to rewrite his reminiscences and sell them to another newspaper. He reportedly did not have the money to buy paper to write on, and so Albert lent him 1 shilling to buy paper. In return, Henry promised to buy Albert the boots as soon as he received the money. The end of 1922 was marked by Henry's death. He had given Albert the football boots and died. The grieving was profound, as Henry's passing happened at a time when Albert was coming within the same range of understanding and affection as that of his father. Undoubtedly, his father's passing marked the end of Albert's boyhood. So this is when Albert pursues his own journey into the judicial ending of life. Once again, the book is very rich in details of the sort, many of them being recounted in a stirring and grim way, but others being recounted in a discreet and dignified manner. In a nutshell, throughout his career, Albert Pierrepoint recalls hanging George Hay, who said himself that he dissolved the bodies of his numerous victims in a bath of acid after taking a draught of their blood. Pierrepoint also hanged up to 27 people in a day throughout the Nuremberg trials, but other people as well. He also hanged innocent people, such as Timothy Evans. He even had to hang his best friend, whom he kindly nicknamed Tish, just like Billington. On a sociable side, he was initially a grocer, and then later in life he ran his own pub, cynically but truly called Help the Poor Struggler. You'll find loads of other insights of the executions he carried out, which will allow you to your imagination to run wild, accounts of the last words of the victims, procedural and conventional routine in the ending of life, and so many other details of the sort. This is clearly a book which is meant to make us think further into whether capital punishment, in whatever form, is an effective, humane, acceptable in the 21st century way to deter crime or to punish crime. The definitive answer of the man who carried out over 600 execution is that capital punishment achieves nothing but revenge. I am so curious to find out, what do you think? As you know, capital punishment is still legal in United States. 28 states in America still have it as a penalty. There's debate in some African states whether it should be reinstated. Some countries in the Middle East have it as well. So all we really need is to form a reasoned opinion on why it's good or why it's not good. And I would love to hear your thoughts on it in the comment box below. Thank you again for your time. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will see you next time for another trial. Thank you and goodbye.